When I was fitting the hinges, I thought I was being so clever. Just watch, right there, yep, I screwed it up. At this point, I was still like 15 minutes away from realizing. I was just so happy with how I figured out to cut these hinge mortises. I mean, in some ways it was pretty smart. This little jig made lining everything up really easy. It made knowing where the router bit was going to go very simple. And accurate too. These came out the perfect width the first try. Too bad they were way too deep. Anyway, here's a shot of my wrist. Yep, that is an alright looking wrist. See, just look how perfectly that hinge fits on the edge of the box. And clamping the bottom and the lid together, wow, I thought I was clever. It only made me able to screw the mortises up twice as fast. Oh, and right here, just about to be that moment of realization. Here's the problem. These hinges are not designed to be flush with the back of the box. The hinge part needs to stick out just a little bit. If I mounted it the way I thought I could, the hinge would catch and the lid wouldn't open properly, and eventually it would break. It needed to be out like this. So now I need to fix that, and I don't want to replace all the Cocobolo trim. Luckily, I still had some small little scraps. So I wouldn't say I 100% eliminated the screw up, but it is very hard to notice. Not many would ever look this close. Anyway, moving on. I had already fitted the lower part of the lid lock back in the first video, now it was time to put on the upper part. Unlike with the hinges, this did not get screwed up. I am so glad this worked properly. If the lock hadn't opened with the magnet, there would have had to been another section to this video. And that section would have had to involve sawing that pin off the lock and pain and sadness, and nobody wants to watch that. This testing did show, though, that I needed to add some sort of little handle or something to the front of the lid to make it easier to get it open. So I shaped a little handle out of some of the extra Cocobolo. Luckily, CA glue works pretty well with that oily tropical hardwood. I elected to go very simple on the drawer box construction. I did some quick rabbets on the table saw. I also added rabbets to facilitate the drawer bottom. The drawer bottom itself was a piece of 1/8 inch thick MDF. I added some screw holes next. I got the screws started in the holes and had them peeking out just a little. The tape is on the side of the drawer to shim it out a little bit and keep it centered as much as possible. I put the locking drawer front into place and then squeezed the drawer box against it as hard as I could. The little screw tips transferred the spots where I needed to drill my pilot holes. The screws were really just to keep the locking drawer front held perfectly positioned while the glue dried. And of course an ops check was needed. The person who requested this box specifically requested that the locks be opened with a key that would appear to be a coaster and that the coaster have my logo on it. So I came up with a new round design, and I decided to do it in walnut and cherry. Ever since I got the laser cutter, I wanted to try this out. I glued the slices to a substrate so the air assist wouldn't blow the small pieces around. I used spray adhesive so I could release it later with an iron. I had to do quite a few practice cuts before I got everything dialed in. This right here isn't even the final version. I used some wide masking paper to help get all my pieces lined up. These pieces were a little thick, so it took a while, but eventually the iron got the glue to release. This was a little tricky, and I did have a few breaks, but eventually I got all the pieces off and lined up properly. I put both logos together in case I screwed one of them up, and as it turned out, that was the right move. Next, I cut recesses for the magnets inside the coaster core. Once it went through the drum sander a few times, I glued on the walnut borders. Once the magnet stacks were in place, I glued on a bottom and a top. Then all the coaster needed was a little bit of cleanup and sanding. I wanted to trim the watch pillows in koa, so I had to cut up a little bit more of it. I 3D printed a small template so I could get uniform side pieces. For the record, probably about 1/8 of an inch of the actual cutting part of this bit was above the surface of the table. The inside structures of the watch pillows were 3D printed and trimmed in black velvet. The side pieces were epoxied on last. I finished the entire box with Rubio Monocoat Pure. It was really something to see the grain of the koa come out as I applied it. I trimmed out the bottom of the drawer with some more black velvet. I find it's a lot easier to attach this to some thick paper before trying to put it in the drawer rather than try to get the velvet in by itself. A little bit of spray adhesive is all it takes to hold it in place. Next, I glued in the bottom for the upper compartment. I made some little spacers for the 2 miscellaneous compartments in case the requester wanted them. They were a little deep to get anything in and out of conveniently. And with that, the box was all done. Probably better make sure it still works though. Yep, still good. This box really tested me in a lot of different ways. Making the magnetic locks were one of the harder things I've ever done. I hope you enjoyed seeing how it all came together, and as always, thanks for watching.